Hello and welcome back. We are continuing our conversation about building the next generation security organization. I'm Brian Lapidus, and I'm joined by Franklin Donahue, who is the CEO of Lynx Technology Partners. Franklin, let's dive into that next part about building an organizational capability, which is process. How do you empower your organization in order to deliver what the security that you've been hired and you're supposed to do? Now, one of the things that you and I have talked about before is that running an organization itself is different than delivering the services of that organization. What are the key processes for you that happen backstage so that you and your security organizations can perform well on stage with the rest of the business?
Yeah. So it's important to understand who your delivery partners are. Service security is a service organization. You deliver services. You hopefully are delivering value to the objectives, the overall emanating objectives of your business. So, who are your partners? What do you rely on them for, and what do you deliver to them? Because it's sort of what I like to call gives and gets, right? So what do you give them, and what do you get in order to execute some value, whether it's in project management or some agile process or updates. I mean, change management. Those are some of the things where uh, in supporting the business and executing, you really have to understand who your partners are. Even in incident management and crisis response, you have to understand who do you interact with. It's not always the technology organization, it could be marketing. And that goes to the process integration, right? So seamless process integration and mutual maturity. One thing that I have seen, it's really weird, Brian. I've seen security organizations and security leaders say, "I'm going to mature my processes," and they have a maturity map, and I've helped them build some, and I've had some myself, and it matches my strategy. But I have a partner who owns the core of that process, like the PMO organization, for instance, whose project management methodology isn't well baked. So I'm trying to force them in order to mature. My mature process influences their process, and it causes some unnatural frictions.
I wrote that down and I'm circling and I'm really thinking about it, that mutual maturity. The fact that,
Yeah,
if one part of the organization or if your infosec is really secure, you're only as strong as your weakest link. So you have to bring everybody up at the same time or in tandem.
yep, yep. And part of that, it was interesting. I was just having a conversation with someone about this. We sometimes have incongruent strategies across functions. The CIO's organization or another organization it could be, data architecture, enterprise architecture is maturing their processes and functions in one area, and then security is not aligned. And so all of a sudden they are introducing this new process and new method, and we're lagging or they're lagging. It's either way. So we have to, as security leaders and other senior leaders, have to really be in lockstep and sharing strategy and talking to one another about their future plans.
That gets back to what you said in a previous video about that leader to leader connection and being in step. How do you create a process around those gives and gets, the backs and forths between everything to make sure that you get what you need and you're giving the different organizations what they need?
It's a long process, and sometimes it's not easy. Um, some of it, we talk about RACEs and DACEs. We talked about all these things for a number of years, and these are tools that we have. But it is that, and I'll get back to this, and I don't want to overstate it, but it is leader to leader. It is, and it's not. It starts with the leaders and the shadow of the leadership to show that there is cooperation and collaboration, and it's really asking another leader to go on the journey with you to understand what their organization looks like and what it looks like now and in the future and what their gaps are, as well as where my gaps are as a security leader. And then starting off saying, this is how we are currently working together to serve the business, and we're not doing that well in these areas. This is how we work with one another to improve that service delivery. And I'm a firm believer in co-opting my partners. And this, I say this to every CISO I talk to: is co-opt them. Make them a part of your bully pulpit to see that it's mutually beneficial.
For all the technology out there, there's just no getting around the personal connection and the
That's it.
individuality. So key.
Yeah, leadership is not about technology. It's really about the individuals.
All right, so let me ask you this. Many of the practitioners that I see, they talk about cybersecurity as part of the IT organization, or they talk about cybersecurity by
Mhm.
itself. But in our conversations, you constantly stress the relationship with GRC, with governance, risk, and compliance. I would love to hear you expand on your thinking about how these two elements work together.
Yeah, we've talked about three lines of defense before, and really the GRC organization to me is the glue between so many parts of the organization. It is the epicenter of communication, integration, and visibility for the rest of the company, and that could be visibility of risk, it could be integration of processes and technologies, or communication among different business groups. But uh, the point here is that the GRC organization has to understand business. They have to understand the risks that are related to them and understand how that the technical piece, really contributes to the security or impacts the security of the business itself.
Is risk and risk management and security, is it effectively a defensive, reactive position and capability for the organization?
Well, it is both defensive, it is reactive. It's three things: defensive, reactive, and proactive. Right? It has to have all of that. Um, as any type of, and I liken this to fighting crime. To not to be overly dramatic about it, but there are things that we do to detect. I would even say anticipate. This is where I think we're headed: is anticipation of things that can happen, and detecting and responding and recovering. But that's where we are. But I do want to get back to a previous part of what a previous question, and that question was really about the IT organization versus the business. In order to do this proactive piece well, and anticipation, we have to rise sort of out of the IT organization and get closer to the business itself, right? And really understand um, the business aspects of the company and the business risks to know what we're defending against, right? Why are we defending what we're defending? It's not just a vulnerability, but it's not just a threat. It's a threat to the company. It's not just a threat to this asset. It's not just a threat to the technology. It's also a threat to the business. And we have to be able to speak in those terms.
Great. Franklin Donahue talking about how your processes can empower your organization and really elevate to the next generation security organization. Stay tuned. We've got more content coming out with Franklin and Link's technology partners.